Hi, I'm Carl Taylor, and today I thought I'd make a video about understanding studio and flash and other types of lighting. Now the reason is that I actually get lots of comments and questions on our YouTube channel and elsewhere asking about flash. People see videos where I'm using studio lighting and then they ask, where's the flash coming from? And they don't seem to realize that the flash is actually coming from the light that they're seeing. So I thought I'd go over a few of the misconceptions and explain some of the other technical terms associated with studio lighting. Now here you can see a continuous light. That is an LED light, variable in adjustments in color temperature and variable in power. There it's set on a sort of low power at the moment. Over there is another continuous light, but that one is a HMI light, and you can see it's bouncing up onto our floating ceiling panel there. Those are brighter than LED lights, but they're not variable in color temperature, they're daylight balanced. So the question is, why do studio photographers choose to use flash instead of using continuous light? And hopefully that little demonstration actually gave you the answer. The answer is that we can get an incredible amount of more power of light from a flash than we can generally get from a continuous light. However, that very bright power of light only lasts for a very brief instance. So we decide to work with flash, knowing it's going to be very brief, because we're only taking a still photo, because we want more light, allowing us to get more depth of field, use different modifiers, etc. One of the disadvantages of using continuous light for studio photographers is that you really need to work in the dark, or the ability to darken your studio, because you can't take pictures with continuous light if you have other forms of continuous light pollution, like daylight coming through your windows or your existing lights in the building. So you need to cut all of that out to make any form of continuous lighting effective. Now, another misconception with studio lighting, as I said, is about where's the flash coming from and where is the continuous light. Because most of the time, continuous lighting looks like this and it looks similar. This one looks a little bit warmer, as you can see. But what you're seeing there right now is not used for the photograph. That is what we call the modeling lamp. Now you can see the modeling lamp is on now, but if I fire the flash will fire as well. That's what's used for taking the photo. So it's very important to understand the differences. Now that may be a little hot. No, it's okay at the moment. So let me show you a little bit about a flash lamp head that we can see here. So let me see if I'm just going to take the protective cover off. That's got a little bit hot. So I'm just going to pull this off. Now this protective cover is just in case modeling light, blue, or potentially it's a sort of protection element as well. It's also a UV protection in these lights as well. So what you see here is the modeling lamp. That's the continuous light. If I put it on again, there you go. And around it is actually the flash tube. That's where the flash fires from. So they are two separate entities. And it's the outer flash tube which is the one that's used for taking still photos. The modeling lamp is simply used so we can see what we're doing. We don't actually use the light from the model lamp for our photography. Sometimes we do in special cases, but generally we don't. Right, the next thing. What's the difference between, say, this lamp head and this flash head here? You can see that this one's significantly smaller than this one. This is the difference between what's called a monoblock flash and a lamp head flash. Now the reason for this one being bigger is that its power supply, that's the capacitors that charge up to burst the power of flash out, the capacitors are inside this head, and that's why it's called a monoblock. The capacitor for this lamp head is actually down here in this box. So this is the power supply for this smaller lamp head. Now what that means is generally pack systems can have a lot more power because they're a lot bigger they can hold bigger capacitors, and I can plug 3 different lights into this one and control all of them independently. Here I have a heavier lamp head, a much bigger lamp head, but the capacitor and everything is inside. However, this lamp head is nowhere near actually as powerful as this one. For example, this one can output 3,200 joules of power from that pack. This one I think is only a 400 joule lamp head. Now the other advantage of smaller lamp heads means that when you're putting them in big modifiers or other modifiers, they tend to be more stable. They're not as likely to tip over as easily. When you put heavier lamp heads like this, or even the bigger Cirrus 800 in a modifier like that, you need to put a few sandbags on it to keep it stable. You can use that in the bigger modifiers, but obviously it's easier to use a smaller lamp head. Now, another reason that many professional studio photographers prefer pack systems is that all the controls for our flash are on the ground at ground level, which means we can just go over to the pack, change the numbers, change the settings, put what we want into the pack, and that modifies the lamp. And that's especially useful if your lamp head is way up high in a different lighting modifier, because then you don't have to get up on a ladder to reach to change the settings. Now, in saying that, some of the newer lamp heads, even the monoblock ones, do have Wi-Fi control in, and that means you can change the lamp head from an iPad or your smartphone if necessary. So you don't have to actually climb up and do it. But pack systems are still quite favorable amongst many professional photographers. Now there's one other slight variation you can get as well. You can get battery powered studio flash systems or location flash systems. For example, this particular model of flash has an alternate version with a lithium battery that plugs in the top. That allows you to use the system either in the studio or on location and without any cables. However, if you're doing lots of shoots and lots of flashes, a powered supply means you don't have to worry about the batteries running out. Right, let's talk about the next thing, power and joules. This is one of the more powerful systems. As I said, you can see it says 3,200. That means it's capable of 3,200 joules output of power, and I can put 3,200 joules down one power and have that all come out of one flash if I want, or I can distribute it across 3 channels, 3 different lights, and I can distribute it asymmetrically. Now, asymmetrically means I can split that power of 3,200 joules up into any ratio I like. I can have 100 joules on one lamp, 100 on another, and then 3,000 on the other lamp if I want. I can mix it and blend it around. If you've got a symmetrical pack, you may find you can only split 1,000 joules, 1,000, 1,000, etc. Now, on mono lights, you can obviously you've only got the amount of joules that are in that particular lamp head anyway, so your power control is just on the back and you adjust the power. I'll come to that in a second. Now, as I say, you'll find the power rating for the lamp written on it somewhere. This one says, it's an 800. So this is an 800 joule lamp. Now, what does 800 joules mean? Because we get a lot of questions from people saying, well, you know, should I go for a 800 joule, or should I go for a 400 joule lamp, or should I go for a 1200 joule? And they seem to think there's this massive, massive difference between them. But actually, there isn't that much difference. For example, an 800 joule lamp is only 1 stop brighter than a 400 joule lamp, okay? It's exactly the same as the change in ratio stops of ISO, for example. So if we shot an 800 joule lamp at f11, then we would need to shoot a 400 joule lamp at f8. So it's just that 1 stop difference. Or alternatively, we could just put the ISO up from 100 to 200 to take the 400 lamp to equivalent, if you like, to the 800. So joules on lamp heads or power packs are basically the same in f-stops. So a 400 joule lamp, an 800 is 1 stop more powerful. A 1600 joule lamp head is another stop more powerful, and a 3200 joule pack is another stop powerful. So you just need to think about it in f-stops. Now, while we're on the subject of f-stops, let's talk about power range. So on this particular pack, I can go from power 10, which is now 3,200 joules, and I can go down to power 9, which would now be half of that at 1600 joules. That would be equivalent to 800 joules. That would be equivalent to 400 joules, 200 joules, etc., etc., as you can see. Now, of course, we can go in 1/10 of an f-stop as well, so we can adjust in tenths of an f-stop for really precise control. Now, this particular lamp head allows me to go from 3,200 joules almost down to about 3 joules. So it's a huge power range in that professional level power pack. On monoblocks, the range isn't usually as great, but it can still be pretty good. So on this lamp head, I can take the power up to 10, which is going to give me 800 joules. Power 9 will give me 400 joules. Power 8, 200 joules, 100 joules, 50 joules, 25, 13, 6.5, 4, 5, and that's it. So my power range isn't as great, and I can only go down to power 2, whereas I can go down to power 0.5 as it stands at the moment on this particular lamp head. So I've got greater versatility in the amount of joules control with the pack system compared to the monoblock system. But in saying that, this particular model is still very good. Now, we still have a modelling light on this light, so we can turn the modelling light on and off and use the modelling light in low power or in brighter settings as well. We still have a test button. Let's turn the power up on there and fire that again, so you can see here. Now, the other thing to consider is, what are we talking about in changing that light, okay? Because a lot of people get confused. So let's say, for example, you used power 8. People think that a one-stop drop-in light would need to be power 4, but that's not how it works with studio lighting. If we were shooting at f11 and power 8 was correct at f11, then if we wanted to shoot at f8, that is the one-stop less light, okay? So one stop less of light is one whole number down, not half the amount on the power settings. And then again, this has 1/10 of an f-stop control as well. Now, how do we trigger flashes? How do you fire flashes? Well, we use these. These are a triggering device, and this goes on top of the camera, usually sits on the hot shoe. So for example, you slide it onto your camera. Here's a medium format Hasselblad camera, and then when you press the shutter button, it sends a signal to the pack or to the receiver, and that will fire the flash at exactly the right moment. We also have a test button, as you can see, which is allowing me to fire the flash just by pressing the test button. I can also control up and down some of the power settings via the trigger as well. So that's how we trigger our flashes. Now, finally, other advantages of pack systems, yes, they are a lot more expensive, but they have some very advanced features as well. For example, with this particular Broncolor Scoro pack, I have the ability to link it to another pack. I can do multiple flashes to allow me to reach even 50 flashes per second between two packs. We are able to shoot very rapid flash bursts if we need to. I have color temperature adjustment, so I can change the color balance of the actual output of the light as well. And really importantly with this one, I have full control over the flash duration. That's the burst of light and how long it lasts for, which basically allows you to freeze super, super fast moving objects like liquid splashes, etc. So, hope that gave you a good overview of studio flash lighting and clears up some of those misconceptions. I'm Carl Taylor. Thanks very much for watching. Get my completely free photography course with no sign-up required. You can also access our free 90-page ebook. Just click the link or go to carltayloreducation.com.